Hey guys, we're
Hey,
live
Katie.
again on What's Up with Upslope TV, episode number 4. I'm back again. Hopefully you're excited about that. This is episode 4, fly fishing and conservation with RepYourWater. Those homies right there. You got me again. Sorry to tell you, I'm Katie Hill. I'm Upslope's marketing manager, trying to run point on these episodes for you guys each week. And we got Henry Wood. Take it away from the super cool gear room, Colorado man cave.
Oh yeah, this is it. This is where all the magic happens. For sure.
Hi, Henry.
Yeah, I'm Henry. I run sales and marketing at Upslope, and just glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. And without further ado, these two guys down bottom. Sorry, we're cutting you off a little bit. We got Garrison and Corinne Doctor, founders and owners of RepYourWater, with some of the most official sounding names you'll ever see in the biz. Take it away, guys.
Yeah, we're doctors by name only.
Occasionally there's some confusion there, but just name only. So
yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, we're stoked to be here.
Very fun to see you and drink some of the wares. I'm going snow melt. It's a nice, beautiful Colorado day.
Yes, Henry, are you drinking today?
Cheers. Oh yeah, I'm drinking some experimental IPA. You know it.
Ooh,
Nice.
Well, let's get into it, you guys, because the people came for y'all, and they came to talk about fly fishing, right? So something we all love here at the brewery. I myself am far from a pro. I've been on a couple of private water trips and done some stuff actually with the crew at Upslope. Henry's here to talk a little bit about his experiences fly fishing, as well as with the 1% for River campaign that we run with Craft Lager. And really, you guys are here to give us your kind of tricks of the trade, and then talk about RepYourWater as a brand and what you guys are all about, and give us a little bit of info on your conservation efforts. So I think we should start by just explaining what is RepYourWater, right? So I'll get your logo here up on the screen over by Henry's head, in case people are familiar with that. And if you're not, check them out online. But tell us kind of why you guys started this. What's it all about? What are we learning about?
Yeah, for sure. So we're an apparel company. So we make hats, shirts, accessories, drinkware, all sorts of fun things that are usually fishing related, but also outdoor general. And really the genesis behind the brand is, my passion has been fly fishing since I was 10 years old. I've always loved fishing. And it's kind of odd because nobody in my family fishes. My dad doesn't fish. I bought him multiple fly rods and they come back to me because he doesn't get it. But my passion's been fly fishing, but my background is in fine art and design. So I love to draw. I've always loved to draw, and I love to do graphic design. So RepYourWater is kind of a melding of those two passions. When the recession hit, which was
08.
Yeah, 08. I was knocking around doing a few things, but I was doing guide trips out of one of our local fly shops here. And back then, looking around at, hats and apparel that they had in the shop, it was like a big brand or it was that specific local shop. And I was like, hey, I think it'd be cool if there was a hat that graphically said, I love Colorado and I like to fish, Nice. So started working with Corinne and coming up with some designs and
snowballing some ideas. And I think the initial go was like 3 fun designs. One of them we actually put to market. We've looked back at the other ones and actually they're not bad.
Yeah, we should probably get them going.
So what was the first fish that was ever part of the apparel?
We did. So back then we did when we still make this hat, but it's our Colorado flag trout hat. And that was, keep in mind, this is 08, right? So it was before the Colorado flag is what it is today, right? Now it's everywhere. And back then you didn't see it much. So we like to think we started a little bit of a trend there, or at least we were part of a trend.
We do have a friend that thinks we legitimately started the Colorado flag trend. And I
would take it. Own that. That's awesome.
We're at least part of that. Yeah. So our original design is that Colorado flag trout that we still make and still love.
And like right around that time, and Henry will speak more to the Upslope side of this, but it's when the 1% for Rivers on the craft lager started. Tell us about that first, Henry, and then I'll tell you my interpretation.
Yeah, okay. That's awesome. Yeah, so, we started it. So Upslope was founded in 2008, and we came out with 2 beers, the first at the very beginning. And then our brown ale came out like 2 years later. And then later that year, craft lager came out. So we knew we had this great winner in the tap room. We were selling it on draft and just experimenting with lagers. And in the meantime, rolled out in package and cans. My good friend, who's godparents, a couple of my kids, Tom Reed, who lives up in Pony, Montana, he brought in St. John Elbert, who at the time was the president of Colorado Trout Unlimited. And Tom was working for TU as well for the national chapter or national organization. And he's like, hey, we really want Upslope to brew a beer and sell it in package and give a percentage of the royalties or the profits to Trout Unlimited. And that was already being done up in Montana, and a couple other breweries were doing that. And it was a fantastic idea. So we started jamming on it, and what we ended up doing was 1% of top line revenues. It's not just profits. It's not net profits. It's built into the entire cost of the beer. 1% of those revenues goes to the state chapter where the craft lager was sold. So if you buy craft lager in Montana, your chapter up there is going to benefit. You buy in Colorado, CTU is going to benefit.
And it started here in Colorado, right? That was your first.
Yeah, we weren't anywhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
Join the club.
That's right. And I think the time that you two heard about it was when we announced it at the Fly Fishing Film Tour. And I guess it had been the 2010 tour.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Yeah.
That was 2010 is when.
There it is.
There
it is.
Yeah, 2010 is when RepYourWater actually started to become more of a business as opposed to just like an idea in the clouds, you know?
Right.
And we were at that Fly Fishing Film Tour, and you got up on stage and you were talking about it, and Garrison are kind of elbowing each other like, oh my God, that's so cool. We already loved Upslope because Garrison's dad actually lived right by the Lee Hill Tap Room.
Across the street from my house, where I live now.
Now he lives.
Turns out now.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah. And so I remember hearing that and we're thinking, oh man, we already love Upslope beer. Now they're doing this piece with conservation that ties in with what we love anyway. And then we were already thinking on this business side. And so I either emailed you or called you and I said, can I just come and chat about the 1% for Rivers? I brought our one hat that we had and I said, so how does it work? Who do you talk to at CTU? Because we wanted to do something similar, because for us, you know, apparel is kind of a dime a dozen, but we really wanted it to mean something. Like if it shows a Colorado flag and Colorado pride for fishing, we wanted that to mean something for Colorado fisheries and Colorado conservation. And so we just kind of jumped on the bandwagon and we did 1% of our revenues of Colorado themed items that went back to Colorado to you. Same thing. And it's grown since then. Now we have 17 regular conservation partners and we're up to 3%.
Wow.
Yeah, so we do 3% across the board now. So anything that's Colorado themed goes to CTU. But we also have other regional partners and national partners that we work with.
That's so fantastic. Good for you guys.
And here we are this many years later.
I know, it's 2020.
Doing a super badass collaboration and hanging out more frequently. So thanks for stopping in, Corinne, and thanks to Henry and Fly Fishing Film Tour for announcing that we were doing that, because I think as much as possible, I want people to know that when they drink craft lager, they are supporting 1% for Rivers. You know, it's super important to us as well. So it's cool that it kind of inspired you guys to want to give back too. And and here we are. So happy to have you.
And craft lager tastes really good on a river, so it's
It
fitting.
does. And also we have enough of a window into Colorado Trout Unlimited and the great work that they do on the ground and some really cool projects. And also to know people over there now and know like how much craft lager means to their budget and that it really does make a difference, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
it's not insignificant,
No.
the support that Upslope has provided for CTU. I'm also a board member of Colorado to You. I should disclose
oh yeah,
that.
you should.
Oh, this is
Good
just
point. Good point.
So on behalf of Colorado to
Yeah,
You, we're
there you
very
Take that hat off with this hat on.
Nice. Cool. Well, I think
Side note, I'm going to pour my Citra into my Citra glass just to enjoy the full,
I mean, why
the full
wouldn't
notes and the full flavor here.
And look at this comment here. I figured I'd pull this up. Marcus says, I like the red label Upslope.
you? Hey, there it is.
Because I know, Garrison, this is kind of your I know craft lager's like our go-to Trout Unlimited product, but Garrison, I know you fancy yourself a Citra Pale Ale when you're crushing it out there on the water. So
Yeah.
thank you for the support on that beer.
Yeah, personal favorite of mine.
I love the matching glass. You're really killing it these days.
I mean, look at him go.
Yeah.
So, all right, I think that let's see how y'all want to play this because I have some incredible pictures of fish that you guys have caught over the years. And I want to cut into that, but I don't know if you guys want to talk about some tips and tricks first or if Henry wants to go about some of his experiences. But the audience is going to be blown away with the hogs that I'm about to put on the screen. So I'm just stopping at
Let's
the
just go to the fish porn.
Keep teasing
I
that.
want to hear more.
I think
That's
maybe we should give everyone out there just a little pitch on getting into fly fishing and that
Okay.
it's not hard, that it's not necessarily
Yeah, we don't want to intimidate with the big fish
right.
first.
It's
Okay.
not necessarily super expensive. It's not something that is really hard. It's something that you can get into relatively affordably with some pretty minimalist gear, with a reasonably priced rod, reel, a few flies. Hopefully with this COVID situation, you can still stop in at a local fly shop and talk to some of the guys down there, and they're always super knowledgeable.
Yeah, I was going to say the best resource, and this isn't always true now that we're in this online world, you know, I mean, even just in general, not just right now because we can't actually all be together, but fly shops still are one of those places that it's not just a community and it's not just the culture, but the knowledge in the fly shop is so huge. And they're really great people in there. You walk in, you say, I'm a beginner. I don't have a ton of money to spend on this, you know, first kit. They've got the entry level stuff there and they will walk you through it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to show some gear?
Yeah.
Or like,
So fly fishing shops are open. Is Rocky Mountain Anglers, is Randy going to work? Do you guys know?
By appointment, as far as I know.
By appointment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Last I heard it was by appointment, but I think that that's changing a little bit here. And definitely you could still call down to the shop and get some advice and order something up. Yeah. I mean, I guess just to start from the beginning, if anybody's not familiar with fly fishing or has just kind of seen the imagery. I mean, fly fishing was developed back in the day to be able to cast an unweighted fly, a lure made of feathers and fur that emulates an insect.
you mean like something like this that I happen to have
That's
so
the
handy?
Right. Now that one has a little bit of weight, but typically like if you cast a conventional rod, what you're casting is the weight of the lure or the bait or whatever's on the end of your line. Fly fishing being different in that.
Oh yeah, that's
There
it.
you go. If you tie that to the end of your spinning rod and try to cast it, it's not going to go anywhere, right?
Right.
Fly fishing is a little bit different because the fly line itself has a thickness and a weight to it, and that's what you cast. I would also say, like, you know, fly fishing is a sport, I guess, like all sports, right? But you can continue to learn things about it through your whole life. And I've been doing it for more years than I care to count at this point. I don't want to date myself, but I still feel like I'm a student always. of learning new things, which is one of the things that makes it so intriguing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I started fly fishing when Garrison and I were more serious in our relationship, which was a number of years ago. We're very young, but we've been together for a very long time. So this was like 15 years ago, our first fly fishing date. And I was an easy convert because I already loved wildlife and animals and the outdoors and all of that. But I will still, every time we go fishing, and it also I've noticed when we go with different people, because everybody has their own background and skills and whatnot, I learn something every time we go. And I'll tell Garrison, oh, well, I was just thinking about that. It's because I'm still such a beginner. And he's like, Corinne, you are not a beginner. Like,
not with the pictures I'm about to
get over that. No, I know I'm not a beginner, but it is funny because I still hear so much new information that I just absorb, and it's so much fun.
Right. But I do think I would just say to anybody out there who's kind of been looking at it or thinking about it, it's first of all a great activity to do in these socially distanced times. Obviously, we all have to be sensitive to laws and regulations and stay local and all of that, but it's a way to really get out, and it doesn't have to be super expensive or super complicated to start out.
Yeah, and just to emphasize that point, it's a lifetime sport, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can learn your entire life. It's I always, it's interesting to compare it to golf because it doesn't fit, but I hear a lot of people making it's like it's their rustic golf. It's their water golf. I mean, because I hear from my friends who are avid golfers, they're like, every time I play, I get better. I feel like every time I fish, I learn something new, and it's just a nuance in the cast, or
exactly
what he knows about a fly. I mean, and your observation skills get better over time, which improves your fishing.
Yeah.
Well, and what's cool is that it's not ever really like a set it and forget it situation. It's ever changing throughout the season based upon what insects you need to be dealing with to mimic the fly with.
Yeah.
Runoff levels. I don't know. Can y'all talk about it's almost impossible to be like fly fishing 101, right? Because there's such a wealth of information out there. But just to boil it down, like what are some really strong tips for somebody who is just like kind of a beginner? I mean, is that something you can even tackle in this sort of time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say just some tips for a beginner would be to not be overwhelmed and not be afraid to just get out there.
That's a good one. Patience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, there's a lot of people who think about fishing in general, like, oh, I don't have the patience for that. And they have a connotation of like sitting on the bank looking at a bobber. And fly fishing is not that.
No.
You're active the whole time. You're engaged the whole time.
Which is what makes it so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it can be meditative in that you are really focused on what's happening and in the moment, but there are things happening all the time, which is great. Yeah. But in terms of just a 101 sort of synthesis, I would say for somebody just getting started, don't worry too much about casting long distances or about really specific fly patterns, but focus instead on presenting the flies that you have, and they could be very simple, basic fly patterns that you have in a fly box, presenting them well, close to you, and be kind of sneaky in how you do that, and you'll catch fish.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I've been somewhere with an instructor or something I've paid for and experienced, it's part of a larger thing. Like when I went with a bunch of the ladies at Upslope, we did an all-girls outing with RMA here in Boulder. And it was so funny because the second that the guy and gal who was there helping us out cast to just show an example,
they cut it.
We're like, come on, you make it look so easy. But the coolest thing was that every single girl that day caught a fish.
Yeah.
They were super small, right? But it's really exhilarating the first time you catch a fish on a fly.
There's probably fishing Boulder Creek, right?
Yeah, quite a bit.
There's just not a ton of big fish in there, so that's
right.
Yeah.
I don't know even what they were. Were those browns perhaps?
Brown trout in there, yeah.
Brown trout.
Yeah, so they were like,
Oh,
yeah,
Katie, good job. That's awesome.
I think we
trying.
are
Fishing already. Yeah, when you say like concentrating on reading water and knowing just where they're going to be, and if you can see them, casting to them, that's a huge part of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, you're going to improve, and as opposed to just randomly casting into fast currents and things like that.
Well, I also will say, just another plug for fly shops is that a lot of them offer either free or relatively cheap introduction to fly fishing classes. And they cover bug life, entomology, knots, flies, basic casting, basic rigging, and it also is your first step into that community. And so if you have somebody else in that class that's also a beginner, then you take out any ego. You guys are in the same exact level, and you just found your first fishing friend. So
and just be careful, because you could end up in a situation like we are, where you have drawers and drawers of flies and fly boxes and
it's an addiction
and bins of flies. I mean, this is, so if you're going to fish a fly that looks like another bait fish, right? And flies, we call that a streamer. So this is example. This is just one of my streamer boxes to take on a boat.
Oh my God.
And just,
that's just our big streamer.
You know, there's overstock over there, but just in case, right? So just be careful what you dip a toe in.
So, okay, can I ask, with that impressive box right there with seemingly huge flies, lures, whatever that would be referred to as, pardon my ignorance here, which is why I'm asking, kind of what are you after with something like that? Can you pull one out and put it on the screen? Like, those look like pretty large.
There's a misconception, I think, that trout are like very delicate and eat tiny insects, and they can. Like, depending on the time of year and the situation, they can
also
be
eat each other constantly.
Very selective, but
wow, okay.
They are at heart a predatory fish, and they will not hesitate to crush something much larger. So some of these flies, I'm going to see if I can pull one out of this box here, are quite large. Also keep in mind that this pattern slims down a lot in the water, right? But this is
quite fluffy right now.
Looks ridiculous.
Wow.
But when you put that in the water and all this slims down and it has a lot of movement, this thing swims and looks like a small trout. And it doesn't have to be a giant trout. Like, sometimes you'd be surprised. Like, if they can eat it, they'll probably take a swing at it.
Well, one of the most renowned streamer anglers and streamer tires of flies and designers, his name's Kelly Gallup out of Montana, and he has done a lot of research on what streamers and what bait fish are eating, and he has photos and all this data of fish that are eating 50% of their own body length in another fish, and sometimes they're eating snakes that are longer than they are. I mean, they're eating everything.
That is awesome. So are there like times a day that are preferred? Like I feel like last time I went fly fishing was into last summer, and it was getting a bit dark, and the bugs were all around the water, and we went at it, and I didn't catch anything, but my husband did, and he was really excited about it. It was right before it was like too late almost to see, and it was really exciting. So I feel like he was hitting it at a good time because of the bug activity on the water. Like, are there some tips about times or locations that people should know about?
Yeah, I mean, early and late is usually good in fishing, right? Low light levels makes fish feel more comfortable to be moving around in the water and less vulnerable to airborne predators and any other number of things. But I would say that in Colorado, especially, like throughout the day, those fish are usually feeding or going to be opportunistic. And then also, depending on the time of year, like when it's cold out, a lot of times the best times to fish are the warmest and sunniest times of the day.
So like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Just because you're looking for a little bit more activity and a little bit warmer temperatures from those fish, so they kind of get up and going. But throughout the prime summer months, early and late is always good. but you can fish in such a way as to catch fish
anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have any like other props you want to show people and give them heads ups on, like reels or line, different weights? Like, is there anything that's worth talking about in that kind of department?
Boy, that kind of depends on where you are, but I would say here we are in Colorado. Like, get yourself just a nice like 4-weight and a floating line and a couple of basic flies. You know, some kind of attractor dry flies like you'll see in this box here, right? Something that floats high, has a little bit of foam on it maybe, and you can suspend another weighted fly underneath that, right? So you have a fly on the surface and a fly underneath it. Call that a dry dropper rig, right? So most of these flies have beads on them. They have weight on them.
Yep.
Right? So they're meant to be subsurface. So the combination of a simple kind of fly on the surface and something weighted on a floating line and a relatively lightweight rod, a 4-weight rod, and you're going to catch some trout.
And then you're hitting different life cycles of bugs, you know, like if they're emerging from the bottom and that's what they're feeding on, you've got that covered with the dropper. And then, you know, if they're hatching and flying and landing on the surface, you've got that covered with the dry.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to ask, because that was a technique that I've used several times that I've been out with professional guides and whatnot. And like, is that just because you're kind of doubling down on your chance to catch something? Or is there like, so they see the one on the surface and then they go for the one under the water, or kind of what's the rationale there?
I think it's both.
I was going to say it's definitely both.
Sometimes you will have fish that like want to look at the surface fly, but they're a little tentative to like really commit.
Right.
And then that subsurface fly is right there. So let's take a whack at it. But it's also just one of the most effective ways to present that weighted fly, that subsurface fly, at a given depth. You know, you're suspending it so you can cast it quite a ways from you and suspend it at a certain depth. And you also have a chance that anytime something can come up and just take a swing at that dry fly, which is so fun when they do, right? Because you get to see the whole thing.
That is pretty exciting when it like gulps at your dry fly. That's exciting. It's not so exciting when you miss it, right? Because that's kind of like, that's what happens to me. I feel like I've had some really cool opportunities up in Steamboat and whatnot, and I get really stoked, and I've really had an issue kind of like setting the hook or landing the fish, right? So like, is there any tips about that? Or do you think that's more of it comes with experience and muscle feel and all that?
I would say experience, yes. But one of the things that I've noticed, I've taken a couple girlfriends out that, you know, they've never even thought about fishing, but because I love it so much, they're like, I want to go. This looks cool. I love seeing the fish you catch. One of the biggest pieces is having too much slack in your line. So that instead being like, you know, the line should be tight from the end of the rod, we'll get in the frame, end of the rod to your fly, so that when that fly gets eaten, you just have to do a small movement to get the hook set, you know? And if you have way too much line out, then you're pulling, the first thing you're pulling is that extra line. So the fish could have come and gone really quickly in that time, especially those small fish, like the small fish in Boulder Creek. They're so like they come and go so fast.
Yeah. Well, then I feel proud to have caught one, no matter if it was 6 inches or not.
That's right. Trout are amazingly efficient at eating something. They can discern that it isn't actually food quite quickly and just spit it out. And so if you don't come tight to that fish pretty quick, it's over. The other thing is you always want to hold the line underneath a finger of your rod hand. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The hand that's holding your rod, you have to keep the line underneath one of the fingers of your rod hand, so that when you do have a fish that eats and you come tight to it, you raise your rod and you come tight to that fish, you can stay tight on that fish while you strip line in.
Keep the pressure on there.
Otherwise, if you don't, you end up in a situation where you're holding the line, but you can't strip any line in without dropping the line and re-grabbing the line. And that,
Henry, do you have anything to add?
I was
about
just going to geek out a little further, and even trout they're going to take the fly at different patterns. There's some, that are going to just slam it, whereas a cutthroat is going to sip it and just take it a lot slower. So the timing on that, setting that hook, can vary from species to species.
Yeah, I mean, you can be too fast or too slow, depending on what you are.
And sometimes that's about the hatch too, right? If they're chasing a bug, like they're eating caddis and they're really just like swinging at it. Whereas if they're eating like mayfly spinners and it's just like a slow sip, very different tempo.
There's just, like y'all said from the onset, there's just something to learn every day, and every experience teaches you something different. But we do have a kind of a question that's been on my mind anyway that I want to put up here. And I know this is going to lead us straight into the pictures. So if there's anything else you want to tell people randomly about tips and tricks before we start drooling over these pictures.
Well, I'm going to need a fresh beer for that. We did get a growler of the Czech dark lager. I'm pretty pumped.
Look at that, baby.
And our camp mugs fit a full pint. It's a little deceiving.
It's a sleeper. It's very deceiving. You don't think you could fit a full pint in there. So just
I would have thought half a pint, to be honest.
Intentional, right? You guys chose that cup for that reason.
That's the one.
Exactly. I chose this size. You can get them in smaller sizes, but I said we need the one that can fit a pint.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the question that's on everyone's mind, and particularly mine. Even though I've seen a whole slew of your pictures, I'm still curious what y'all are going to say about what's the biggest fish you've caught. Obviously, do you throw them back after you've caught them is a reasonable question to ask, because in many areas, people would be eating those trout or whatever fish they're catching. So kind of curious about how that all works with you guys, and mainly want to know your biggest fish story.
That's good.
Well, we'll do the easy one first. Do you throw them back? I would say 95 or more % of the time we do practice what's called catch and release. And some of that is a legal piece.
Sure.
So there are certain areas where you fish where you have to catch a fish and put it back. And then a lot of it is just morals, depending on the species and whatnot. But also depends on the area. So like here in Colorado, our native fish is cutthroat trout.
Cutthroat fish.
The cutthroat fish. We jokingly call them that, so I slipped. So the cutthroat trout is our native to our watershed, and brook trout, who are native to the East Coast, are an invasive species here. They've been introduced a ton. And in cutthroat water, we will catch a bunch of brook trout, keep them, put them on the grill with a little lemon inside, and it's amazing.
They're delicious. And I would say it's like the more that you fish, the less it becomes about keeping fish, and the more it becomes about sort of the process and the pursuit. The other thing is sometimes people who don't fish a lot see pictures of really big fish and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't keep that one and eat it. It's huge. And we do keep fish sometimes, as Corinne said, but if we're going to keep fish, it's the smaller fish. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, the smaller fish usually taste better. Those really big, mature, old fish are not usually the best eating fish. Also, those are the genes that we want in the gene pool. So those really big fish, like we want to see them go back, and they have incredible potential to produce hundreds and hundreds of eggs.
Yeah.
Or, if it's a male on the other side of that, right? So we'll usually keep some smaller fish that we can put on the grill or the smoker.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that actually was an awesome way to answer that. I think at first I was like, oh, well, catch and release, that's probably what you practice, but really nice to hear kind of your rationale behind the larger ones not eating as well, and then simply put that you want them to reproduce so you can have fun catching their babies.
Exactly.
For sure.
Okay, so stop dodging the biggest fish you caught. We need to hear it, guys. Brag.
Okay, so I'm going to go biggest fish on the fly.
Okay. And say off the fly, because we're interested. Just tell us both.
Okay, well, I have caught marlin conventional fishing
Very cool.
many years ago, but deep sea fishing, caught marlin, obviously a very big fish, but not as much of a, I guess trolling deep sea fishing isn't as much of a passion for me in terms of just the process.
Yeah,
There's not as much of an interactive piece in terms of how that happens, right? So in terms of the fly, the biggest fish that I've caught was a tarpon in Florida. And by tarpon standards, not a giant tarpon, maybe what, Corinne, 70 pounds?
I thought we said 80 at the time. Usually they get bigger as the years go on.
We're going to go with 80 pounds.
The fisherman, I mean,
But this fish was in a shallow back bay in the mangroves, right? So
were you in the Keys?
We were not. We were on the other side of the Everglades from the Keys. Right?
Okay.
So in the backcountry, in a shallow bay, 2 feet deep, everything's pretty calm, mangroves all around. And we saw this fish. This fish was laid up, as they like to say, right? So this fish is just, and I don't know if anybody really knows why these larger tarpon go into these shallow back bays and they just sort of hang out, right? So this fish is just hanging out. And we saw just 2 inches of his tail
just like flash in the sun
come out, right? And we were a long ways away. So we pull over in our skiff. And we couldn't tell.
He keeps saying we. I do think we need credit to our guy.
Yeah, I'm in the front of the boat. I am not pulling the skiff.
Okay, cool.
Our guy, Drew, at Mangrove Maniac on Instagram. Check him out. Great
awesome
guy. Anyway, he pulls the skiff over. I'm in the front of the boat. And we're having a hot debate on the skiff, like which direction was the fish facing? Because that's going to dictate where I put the cast, right? And I was convinced that the fish was facing to the right. So I like put a big cast right and it hits the water. And when you cast a long cast with a fly rod, you shoot a lot of line out of your rod. And so you can't just immediately pick up that whole length of line and recast it, right? Because there was so much line that shot out via the momentum of your cast, you can't just immediately pick it up and recast it, right? So the cast hits the water, it's done. And as soon as it hits the water, our friend Drew, who's up higher on the pulling platform, is like, he's facing left. He's facing the other way. And I'm like, oh my God.
You screwed the pooch.
Yeah. So I'm just stripping line in as fast as I can to try to get enough line back in so I can recast. And the fish must have turned just enough to see that fly.
I mean, they have huge eyes. So
huge flies. And that fly was moving really fast, right? Because I was just like, I got to get this line back in. And all of a sudden there was this giant boil of water as this fish kicked its tail. And so we knew it was like on the move and had seen something. And Drew was like, oh, I think he's on it. And then and then the fish eats. And tarpon, if anybody's ever seen a tarpon fight, they run and they jump. And especially in really shallow water like that with a big fish, it's like shockingly explosive and shockingly powerful of a fish to have on a fly rod. I was shaking like a leaf, head to toe, my calves.
Well, and I was on the camera, because like obviously we're like, here's some great content. And so I'm on the camera and like shaking as well. This was so exciting. We had never seen big tarpon like that. It was such an incredible day.
So 70 to 80 pounds. How long was that thing?
It was as long as I am tall. I'm 5'3". We measured it on the fly rod.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's insane. I've actually fed the tarpon at in Isla Mirada.
Oh yeah, nice.
We've heard about the
little kibble.
Since this fish, we have fished out of Isla Mirada quite a few times. It's an incredible spot.
Oh yeah, Isla Mirada is insane. So I grew up in North Florida and did a lot of fishing growing up. Not as much as I should have for all the time we spent on the water, and here my dad is retired, sending me pictures of 30-inch redfish.
Yeah.
I'm like, where was this when we were kids?
Right.
That's dope. But he's not really into the fly fishing scene. So hearing, as some of my other friends who still live there are majorly on the fly fishing scene now, and to hear tarpon being caught 70 pounds to 80 pounds on a fly, I I can't really comprehend. So if you have the footage and it's on your Instagram, I'm going to troll and check it out.
We'll send you some pics. There is a picture of it way up above us back there. This is our like pride wall behind us.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll send you some photos. Yeah, tarpon are one of those fish that's like actually accessible even to like 150 pounds on the fly because they eat in shallow water and you can sight fish to them. So you can upsize your fly tackle and land a really big fish, especially if they're in really shallow water like that.
Yeah.
It's doable.
Well, my biggest fish is also a tarpon. So I'll tell a different story because we already talked about tarpon, but just a teaser. Mine, we did not get to the boat, so we didn't like land him, but I did leader him, which in tarpon land that counts. And it was estimated to be 120 pounds.
Wow.
Woo!
Yeah.
Really?
That was brutal.
That was
This
last
fish
November. It was the hardest 90 minutes of my life fighting that fish.
It was
90 minutes. Wow. And where was that? Same location or
very
somewhere?
close. Yeah, very close. But I think honestly, my proudest big fish was my biggest trout, which was down at Jurassic Lake Lodge down in Argentina. And it's just known for giant rainbow trout. They just grow really fast because they're scuds, which are just little freshwater shrimp. And so they're just fat as can be. And, you know, just
constant protein bites.
And they're just so beefy. And this was the second time we had been down there. And it's an easy fishery in the sense that you will always catch fish, but it's challenging in the sense that there's a lot of wind. Sometimes you have to change your flies a lot to figure out like what's going to work. And then also if you want to get a big one, you've got to work for it. And so, I mean, a really big one. All of them are big, if we're being honest.
Do I have a picture of that one?
I don't think
not that one, because unfortunately it was end of day, last light. It's not, the photo doesn't really do the fish justice, but we were fishing all day. It was Garrison, one of our best friends, Woody, and me and our guide, Matt, and we were all day. We were in really great spots. Fishing. Garrison and Woody are catching tons of fish. And I'm working my ass off in the same spot.
And this can happen in fishing, like same flies.
Getting totally skunked.
Yeah, it's just
100%.
like, it's just not happening. You don't know why. I'm sure Henry's had this happen. Like somebody's hot, somebody's not. You don't know why.
And so it was one of those days for me where and sometimes it's really frustrating. Sometimes you just kind of go, oh, whatever, we'll recycle this tomorrow. And it was our first day at the lodge and I was kind of in the whatever mode. And we're talking 7 hours of casting in the wind and I had not had a bite, right?
That's dedication.
So it's end of day. And of course, because we've been there a couple times, all of our friends that work at the lodge have come out to hang out with us. And I'm like, oh, Lord, now they're all here and they know that I haven't caught a fish. And so I said, Garrison, I just need to pee. I'm going to go like regroup. And he goes, fine, go pee, but grab some beers, come back and like
catch a fish.
Yeah, you're not done.
It's like you're not done.
Just do a regroup and let's get going here.
And this is a pattern for me, we'll be honest. But so I go, and peeing in waders as a woman is challenging. So it's like 1,000 layers. It takes a long time. I come back, I grab some beers. I've filled the front of my waders with like 6 beers because there's a bunch of us down on the beach at this point. And I get there and I'm handing out beers. And one of our friends, William, is like, all right, Corinne, let's go catch a fish. And I'm like, nah, I think I'm done. Like, this is a tough day for me. I'm just going to drink this beer and that's the end. And he's like, no, come on. So we go out and I think it was my second cast. These are huge fish, but they eat really delicately. So you kind of feel the end of your line just go tick, tick. And I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, a fish. This is so great. Yay. And this fish just takes off. And it is ripping line. I'm like, oh my God, whoa. Am I out of practice? Do I not know what's going on? And then I get it on the reel and, I'm getting the fish in. And I look over at William, who's got the net, and he's really pausing. I'm like, why is he not netting this fish? Like, come on, man. And I kind of look at him for a second, and his eyes just get big, and he goes, "This is a good fish." I'm like, oh,
Like, we're gonna need a bigger net.
literally, he was freaked out at how small the net was. And so then, 30 seconds later, he does get the fish in the net, and he goes, "Okay, Corinne, now we can talk about big fish."
How big was it?
It was 20 pounds, which for a trout is huge.
Yeah, it was like
That's awesome.
over
Yeah.
32 inches long and with
It was like
a
21 girth.
yeah,
So it was
21,
like,
22-inch girth.
Wow,
I couldn't pick it up by myself, like small hand problem, but
that's so cool.
it was amazing.
Henry, do you have a biggest fish story that you'd like to share, or specifically to trout?
I mean, the biggest fish I've caught has been the largemouth bass down in South Georgia on the fly, and those are fun, and they're big, and they do have these huge mouths.
For sure.
We love bass, Henry.
I love catching bass. They're so fun.
They're
Bass
so
on
fun.
fly is such a blast.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Smallmouth bass is a ton of fun, like down in North Carolina where the rivers have kind of warmed up and the smallies have really, really thrived and run out all the trout, unfortunately. But those are a ton of fun. I guess one that comes to mind was catching a Snake River cutthroat in below the Jackson Lake Dam. I was out with my buddy Jody Utter, who works for Teton Distributing, and we just rented a 2-man raft, and we're just rafting down. We pull out, and there was this run, and we were fishing with just on bottom water, so just letting streamers float or go down really, really low, and just check the end of it, and also it's like, "Oh, what's that?" And like literally, and it's a big current, and it's running down the rocks because you can't.
That's awesome.
When they run downstream, you can't think you're gonna pull them up that.
Now you're
water.
not turning him.
They're just running, and then somehow I didn't fall in the boulders, and you're just crazy and pulled in, and it wasn't it was like a 16-inch Snake River cutthroat with a good friend on a beautiful day in the Tetons.
They're such cool fish, though. I love those Snake River cutties.
They're awesome. They're beautiful. So, I don't know if it's necessarily about I love catching big fish. Don't get me wrong. You go to Boulder Creek for a while, and it's so beautiful. And I have lots of friends like, "Oh, I could just do this all the time." And I've fished a ton in North Carolina in those tight rhododendron cold creeks, and you're pulling out little brookies.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Like, I like throwing little flies with the 3-weight at 7 foot, but when you catch a nice fish, that's always
It is.
Okay.
It is. But I will say, for me, like, people sometimes look at big fish photos and like, "Oh, that spoiled you for life." And I'm like,
Nah.
no. Like, I'm still super fired up about like the 8-inch trout in the creek out back,
Oh, yeah. Well,
I
and
still get the giggles with like every fish that
Totally.
I catch.
And then it's also the pride of like where you put that fly and your ability to cast exactly where you wanted to put it, right in front of that fish. There's nuances to it too.
And like you're saying, a lot of it is so much more than the fish. The person you're with, the sun overhead,
Yep.
The beer we're drinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe even the beer in your mug.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna
it's that beer in that
start
drink cup, right?
What's up?
I said sometimes you can kind of reminisce. You taste that beer that you drank.
Oh, yeah.
So.
All right, guys, without further ado, I'm going to flash up some pictures of some insane fish. And actually, we had a question a little bit ago that I don't know anything about. So when a trout is as big as some that we were talking about, I guess you had said with a 21-inch girth, is that considered is it a steelhead when a trout is that big?
Steelhead are.
That was the question we had.
Yeah, it's the same scientific name as a rainbow trout, but they spend their life at sea and they spawn in rivers. So a rainbow trout just lives in a river system.
Okay.
Steelhead goes to the sea and comes back to.
So this was a rainbow trout out of a lake.
Yeah.
Now, there's some controversy in the fly fishing world about like our Great Lakes rainbow trout
Steelhead.
steelhead. They have a very similar life cycle.
Okay.
They're commonly referred to as steelhead. We spend a lot of time on the West Coast fishing for steelhead that come out of the Pacific Ocean. So we're sort of the more purist ilk that a steelhead is something that comes out of an ocean. But
okay, cool.
That's up for interpretation.
Well, thanks for the question, Marcus.
Yeah.
All
We
right.
appreciate that.
Boom. I'm sorry. I gotta start putting the pictures up. If y'all want to say anything about these, or I can just kind of scroll
This-
through.
The male.
This fish was the biggest brown trout I've ever caught. That's in Patagonia in Chile. And this was like 2 days before Christmas last year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. We got Garrison with a rainbow, it looks like.
Yep. So that's Jurassic Lake. So the story that Corinne told about the big rainbow trout, this is from the same piece of water. So you can see it's like really big behind me with that clear turquoise. It's really deep.
It's gorgeous.
And that
Yeah.
one was like 17 pounds for comparison.
Right.
Good Lord.
Mm.
Okay.
That is from the same piece of water as Corinne's brown trout. This was from that Chile trip right around Christmas. But you can see that fin right in front of its tail is called the adipose fin. And when that fin gets really big like that, it's a
It's an old
indication
fish.
that that's a pretty old trout.
How old are we talking here?
But it totally depends on the piece of water. You know, biologists have to do tagging, but I mean,
Probably in like the 6-7 year range.
right. And in some pieces of water, 20 years just
Right.
depends. But that's definitely the outlier.
That's got just a beautiful pattern. I
Well,
love
the-
that picture.
Yeah, the cool thing about the Chilean brown trout is you see like that pattern is very Chilean, like the blue cheeks with the really big ruddy brown spots on the cheeks.
And these trout were introduced many, many years ago. So they've been wild for so long down there that they have their own kind of distinct markings.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Here's a cute one. Of you
Oh!
guys.
That was in Chile too. So that was actually, you can't see in this photo, but behind us, like over Garrison's shoulder, was this waterfall that was coming down off of these cliffs in the temperate rainforest. You can tell it's the rainforest because you see the rain in the photo.
Yeah.
This was also in Chile, and it was waterfall to this huge pool to this tiny little creek where that fish came from, and it ate a single dry fly, sight fish to it,
Yeah.
and then it went into this huge glacial lake. That was a
So not the
Picturesque.
biggest fish, but considering it's in this like beautiful, clear glacial creek right, by a waterfall, it was a memorable fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think this might be one of my last stills of
There you go. Yeah, this was actually earlier this year, this spring, just kind of pre-COVID. We did a trip down to Pyramid Lake in Nevada and had a great time down there and caught some really big cutthroat trout.
Yeah,
that was the biggest one of the trip.
That's legit.
Yeah.
That is legit. Sounds like you guys know what you're doing, right?
I mean,
Sometimes we also have a lot
try.
of really good friends that know the water where they fish all the time. It's that thing we were talking about when we first started. You learn something new every time. Like that big cutthroat we caught with a friend of ours who's also an ambassador for RepYourWater, and he knows that water. And then also we've got other friends that are giving tips here, tips there, and it's pretty fun to make those connections over a shared passion.
Well, I know we're getting close to an hour, but I'm down to still chat because we've got some cool other stuff to hit on. And I would love to show this picture of you, Garrison, because you spoke at the beginning of this about your background in art. And that's so cool. And it really speaks to why y'all's apparel is just so on point and attractive. So this is a picture of you getting after it at your booth. Doing art at your branded booth. What are you guys at? Some sort of a trade show here?
Yep. We're at the fly fishing show there. So a lot of times I do like live art at these things because otherwise I'm not very good about like staying in one place for long periods of time.
Right.
The ADD kicks in.
It keeps me entertained and keeps me like in the booth if I'm doing a piece of art.
Not to mention it's super badass, so that's kind of cool for you. And
put that one back up, Katie.
What's up? Put the picture back up.
I want to see. That's what turned into the fall brookie.
Yep.
We sell that on a sticker.
Yep.
Nice.
Can you see?
Well, speaking of y'all's, nice.
Yeah.
So here's like a layout of some of their merch, guys. For anyone who's still watching, we are so thankful for you joining us. Please feel free to shoot some comments over, but I just wanted to throw this up so people could kind of see what y'all's apparel is all about. Obviously, this isn't super close up, so I would certainly encourage people visiting their site. Those stickers are just super badass for like a rocket box or a cooler. Or your car or whatever, but I think y'all do some really cool stuff. And this is by far my favorite thing, and I really want to show it. This is Garrison doing a time lapse. So I'm going to throw up 2 of those for you guys to check out. And Garrison, feel free to talk about it, but they're quick.
Yeah, this is just me with a black pen and a white pen on like a tone gray paper, right? So just set up a time lapse and really try to keep the pen moving quick, right? So I can keep this kind of pretty brief. And the nice thing is with those white highlights and the black, you can kind of create a little bit of dimensionality off of that paper.
All right, so I'm going to do one more, and then it's going to be an awesome segue into why we're showing your art and what we're so proud of, because we have a little tease for everyone.
Ooh, the streamer.
Yeah, so this is kind of a big brown trout inspired, right? Chasing a streamer. I love, I spend a lot of time on eyes. I feel like eyes are what make things look alive.
Absolutely.
So I usually give a little bit more attention on an eye piece.
Where is this piece? Did you sell that piece?
No, that's for Poncho.
Oh yeah, that lives down at the lodge in Chile where we just saw those pictures.
Yeah, that's super cool. And then here's just a still shot. Are we looking at a cutthroat here? What did
we sure are. You can tell that's a cutthroat by the cutthroat slash on the lower jaw.
By the way it is.
You can tell by the way it is. And by that really asymmetrical spot pattern, right? So all the spots on the tail and many fewer spots towards the head is a typical of a cutthroat.
Okay, cool. So Henry, do you happen to have that can? Were you able to snag that?
I did. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay, Here we go now.
So this is the worldwide debut, people. No, but really, this is exciting for us because we talked initially about RepYourWater's kind of efforts in conservation. And so we're going to show you a little example of some cans we're working on. Give it a little spin.
I'm just getting the orientation with the camera. I'm a little left-handed.
Well, it's all backwards.
It's all backwards.
Ooh,
that looks nice.
All right, I got it. There's
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go.
When are we gonna see these things, Katie? What's the timeline here, Upslope crew? We'll put you guys on the spot here.
It's a good question, right? So a lot of pivoting going on and changing of goalposts due to the current state of affairs.
For all of us.
But to be honest, as you guys obviously know, we work together. We're so excited to eventually have cans that are similar to that out in the marketplace. Hopefully, we'll be using Citra Pale Ale since that's personally Garrison's favorite, and we think it's kind of a fresh, modern take for the younger angler during hot temps.
And some lagers too, maybe. Hopefully, because that sort of fits in with the vibe.
Yeah, so Henry's got an example can there. That's one of the first editions.
This is just our attempt. We're working with a can company to see like if the Garrison's intricate art can come out on the print, and it looks amazing. So I mean, this is not obviously what the beer can's totally going to look like. There's a lot more that has to go on the can. But we're really impressed with what contour printing was able to do here.
Yeah, it looks so good.
Good detail. Yeah.
From our perspective, we kicked off a lot of this of telling like how RepYourWater and Upslope have been intertwined, even though not this intimately from the beginning with our conservation efforts. And we've always been, imbibing in the Upslope Bev. But This is just really fun for us because beer and fishing, canned beer and fishing goes so well together, and conservation right in there with it. And so this has been really fun for us to been having this conversation for a while, but now to see the sample can and actually start thinking about putting some beer in a can with some Garrison art.
Yeah, it's gonna be super fun. So I hope we have an opportunity for you guys to speak a little bit before we head out about Winty. I'll let you explain what Winty means and kind of what that tie-in is. And it's not going to just be one trout that's featured. We want to take the Upslope footprint, the states that we distribute in, and kind of rep your water, right? Rep the state trout in that state, and put it on the cans, and then have some proceeds going to Winty. So
Winty is WNTI, and it stands for Western Native Trout Initiative, and they are part of the National Fish Partnerships, and they work with restoration of habitat and of populations of native trout here in the West. And so obviously a lot of that is cutthroat trout.
Yeah. And I would also say just broad brushstrokes for anybody who's like, man, this is a lot of like money and dinking around for some really like boutique fish. Also, just keep in mind that like cold, clean, clear watersheds that are healthy really indicate a healthy ecosystem and a lot of healthy things for everyone that's downstream. And everybody is downstream of someone. So also, like some of these projects are really boutique in terms of like a specific cutthroat trout in this area. But also, I think that cold water restoration speaks to a broader health of an ecosystem that goes beyond just a specific species of trout.
The phrase "we all live downstream" is everything.
Right.
Hey, and clean water is of the utmost importance for delicious beer. So which is really why we went hand in hand with Trout Unlimited from the jump, like Henry said earlier.
Well, you guys, I think, hit the nail on the head from the very beginning of Upslope of putting the ingredients on, and the first one being snow melt. That resonated with us as consumers.
We love that.
Before we knew you guys, we were like, snow melt. Hell yeah. Like, yes, that is what it is. And it hits our rivers, it hits our taps, and it hits our oceans.
That's what sustains the trout.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, let's do a little chugging for charity. And
cheers.
Pour one down the gullet for Winty and all of the other cool outdoor charities that are all about conservation for clean water.
Now I need to refill my mug with my dark blocker.
Love it.
I know, right? Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we kind of hit the nail on the head right around the hour mark. We just went ahead and commented with the westernnativetrout.org site.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to check that out, you guys can see it in the comments. If you guys have any questions at all, viewers at home, for these guys, put them in the comments. Hit us up online, and we will do our best to make sure that Garrison, as I call them, Corinne and Garrison's celebrity name.
Yeah.
They are my personal authority on trout and fly fishing. So I hope they will be for you guys. Check out Rep Your Water. Their stuff is super sick. I'm going to actually put up that image of what you guys sell again. I know it's a quick and dirty picture, but you guys need to check these folks out.
And Katie, I would just say really quick on that, this is just some artist reserve collection stuff. So this is all based off of like original pastels that I have done, right?
Cool.
Well, we also sell like this flannel that I'm wearing. We do a lot of like technical lightweight button downs.
Awesome.
We do really great like merino wool socks. We do, like some straw hats.
Oh, hey.
If you really want to like get your sun protection on, maybe.
There you go.
So all sorts of things. Yeah. So check us out, RepYourWater.com and at RepYourWater on the social media things.
Hell yeah. Unless y'all have anything else to do, I think that we can call this thing a wrap and continue to drink together and talk about fly fishing off this channel, because I think we're done, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us, Matt.
Yeah.
You are so cute, and your stories are just amazing. I just love just listening and learning from you guys.
Well, thank you.
You are so cool.
Don't you love hearing beer guys say cute?
Our channel. Thank you. What's that?
I said, don't you just love hearing beer guys say cute?
Yeah, look at these two. They are.
It's pretty cute. You guys are cute. You guys are. What do they say?
Little
Squad
badass,
goals?
too.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you
Cheers,
guys. Cheers.
Woo.
Yeah.
Cheers to you guys. Cheers to all the things you're doing for the planet and for the trout out there in the clean and cold water fisheries. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Check them out, RepYourWater.com, and check out our collaboration whenever that comes out. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Ending. Goodbye.